Hey friends, I am so excited. I'm here with Nick Fradiani. He is in a musical that I'm so excited to see. He's in the Neil Diamond musical, Beautiful Noise, and you guys have seen this man before. He was the winner of American Idol in 2015, and he's been rocking and rolling ever since. Nick, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm in where am I today? We're in Charlotte right now. So yeah, life is good. Just staying busy on the road, doing a lot of these shows. So it's been fun.
Absolutely. I absolutely love that. And I want to first dive into you've got a little bit of a unique connection to this musical and kind of what Neil Diamond means to you. So I kind of want to rewind back in time and let's talk about that connection to Neil Diamond and you.
Yeah. Well, my father's a musician. So growing up, my dad, that was his job. Was He was a singer, songwriter, traveled and played music everywhere, and he just really liked Neil Diamond. And I just had that memory as a kid, and then that was my first concert. I was a 3 or 4. My mom says 3, my dad says 4, but we all went and saw him in concert. So that was my first ever like seeing somebody, in person live playing music. And obviously something there must have shaped, me, and I obviously became a musician myself, and now my first big role in a musical is playing that person. Is pretty wild.
That is so wild. Now, one of the I feel like this has become a trend with some of the Broadway and off-Broadway musicals now, is telling these incredible stories of these great music legends. And I saw the Carole King musical. Gosh, this must have been definitely pre-COVID, so at
Mhm.
least 6 or 7 years ago at this point. But it made me appreciate her music so much more and appreciate her story a lot more because I didn't realize the kind of all the details of the story. So can
Mhm.
you kind of talk about how you're bringing Neil Diamond's story to life and how maybe it's changed your perception of him and his music?
Yeah. Well, I think it'll change a lot of people's appreciation and just overall knowledge of him. He was really a private guy. So, when he had this very like big personality on stage, wore these sequins outfits at one point and had these big anthemic songs, but he was quite a reserved guy and private. And there's no movie about Neil Diamond. He never wrote a book. There's no, this was the way that he wanted his story to be told. And he was very open about, the great things in his life, the really difficult hardships he went through, and some that he, brought upon himself. And he's open about all of that in this story. And you also get to, similar to the Carole King musical, where you're like, oh my gosh, she wrote that, she wrote that. Well, it's the same thing with Neil Diamond. When you start hearing these songs that he didn't record, but he wrote for people when he was young, like I'm a Believer by the Monkees. Not a lot of people know that that was Neil Diamond, and there's many more that you'll find out in the musical. But just a prolific songwriter and had a really cool story, and was brave enough to tell it. And it takes place in a therapist's office. Actually, there's 2 Neil Diamonds. I play the younger Neil Diamond, or Neil then, as we're called, and then there's a Neil now portraying Neil Diamond, played by Bob Westenberg, who is dealing with some things later in life that he's trying to figure out, that his current wife has kind of forced him into, dealing with his issues. And it's him, looking back with his therapist at his life and coming to some revelations. And so it's a really well done musical. So it's a lot of fun, but you also get this deep, heartfelt story within it.
I think that is so incredible. I was not expecting you to kind of talk about a Neil then, Neil now. That sounds really cool. And I think it's amazing kind of what actors can do on stage and, kind of what we miss when we're regular moviegoers because they have the multi-million
Right.
dollar productions and the post-production editing to kind of create that type of a scene. So I'm excited now to really dive in and see this play when it gets to Atlanta. And by the way, everybody, it's coming to Atlanta at the Fox Theater March 11 through 16. But that is really exciting. Can you talk a little bit about the process behind that? Because to me, I was not expecting you to say that. I did a very little reading on it. I just
Mm,
read the bio that was sent to me, so I was not. I'm
yeah.
like, oh, can we dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, well, it was written by our book writer was Anthony McCartan, and he wrote the movie, or the script for Bohemian Rhapsody, the movie about Queen. That was a huge, massive hit. So the cool thing about the writing of this musical is it's very the way you had just said, in a movie it would just go back and forth, da, da, da. But so he wrote it very cinematically to where that's why I think it works so well. especially the therapy sessions. But so that's how it happened. The book writer went and spoke to Neil in person. This is years and years and years ago, and this was just an idea. And I was told they just sat and talked for a long, long time. And Neil was in that moment going to a therapy session and had been working with this one therapist for a long time. And I guess the book writer just said that's how we're gonna tell this story. Yeah, it really works. I remember when I first got the script, I was like, oh, this is like, you think it's gonna start, him in a concert or something, and it's just him sitting there uncomfortable in his 70s talking to a therapist. So it's a pretty cool way of telling a story.
Can we talk a little bit about your journey with music and now musical theater, and what's been some of the bumps in the road for you, kind of, I don't want to say transitioning, but kind of
Yeah.
going down this avenue of music and trying this avenue of like entertainment?
Yeah. So yeah, I won American Idol about 10 years ago, which is crazy, 2015. So this May will be a decade. So I'd been, and I was already kind of old at that time. I was already, well, old in music industry standards. I was 29 when I won, and so yeah, I put out a lot of music. I put out a solo album in 2016, and then a bunch of EPs and singles, and traveled the country, did my own music for a while. And yeah, there were definitely ups and downs. I mean, I think when you come off that show, you just expect it to blow up, and that doesn't always happen. But I was lucky enough to, be able to support myself and have a music career to as a job, which is all I ever really wanted. So I did that for, gosh, I don't know, 5 or 6 years after Idol, and then I had started being brought in for some auditions for musical theater, and I had no background in musical theater. I'd never stepped foot on a stage and acted ever. And then one day I booked a job for A Bronx Tale. It was a movie with Robert De Niro and Chaz Palminteri, and one of my favorite movies. And I booked the role of Lorenzo, which was played by Robert De Niro in the movie. And that was my first ever time going out on stage, and I really loved it. And then we got shut down because of COVID, and I felt like I wanted to keep doing something similar to that in musical theater or theater in general. And I got an agent in that world, and then shortly after COVID ended up, I booked this. So I just love to entertain and perform. I just love being on stage. I mean, my first and always love will be performing my own songs, and I've been a songwriter for a long time, so that'll always be what I want and what I strive for. But this is also really amazing, and I feel very fulfilled doing it. And like I said, I just love to perform live in front of an audience, and we get to do that in front of, I think at this point I've done the show so many times, millions of people, because I did it on Broadway and now doing it on the road. So, it still gets your name out there, and you get to tell a story and sing great songs. So it's pretty awesome.
Absolutely. And I think there's definitely something to be said about the creative type. I just feel like as creative types, we love our one medium, but we're so multiversited, and we could do so many different mediums of telling a story or keeping people entertained, and
Right.
it still feeds our soul. It's not feeding our soul in the same way, but
Mhm.
I definitely love hearing kind of what you were saying about it's something different for you, but you fell in love with it. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I definitely bounced around. I was a theater kid, did choir, all that stuff, and as an adult, I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that, because everybody tells you you're not going to make money as an
Right.
entertainer.
Oh
So
yeah.
I kind of fell
Well, I've
into
never been told.
yeah, it's like I fell into the radio avenue. I'm like, well, I still get to use all the same skills, and I get to talk to people and hear these
100%.
amazing stories, which is ultimately what I love doing. And I'm like, wow, like it's cool to hear all these different stories. I have to ask you, you talk a
I
little
mean,
bit about
radio is theater too, right? I mean, you have to really sell you have to really sell
yes,
what you're saying, because they can't even see you. So it's
yeah, yeah.
I always loved doing radio interviews. I actually like guest hosted at this radio station in my hometown a couple years ago, and I loved it. I think it's such a fun job, and really cool. I love.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? It beats doing actual. I hate saying we're not. It's not that we're not doing news. It's just you have to be so sanitized with like news and TV journalism.
Oh,
It's like
yeah.
tonight at 6. So
Right,
no,
right,
thank you.
right. Yeah,
That's
you
not
could
for
be
me.
yourself. You could be yourself a little more.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great thing when you can find an avenue or a way of expressing that.
Hmm.
What would you say to the person who maybe they love Neil Diamond, they've never been to a theater before, like been to a play? Why would this be the show to go to?
Well, if you love Neil Diamond, you're definitely going to love this show. I mean, I've talked to so many diehard Neil fans that have been coming 30, 40 times. Some people travel the country and see this show. which is so cool and crazy. I was just talking to his wife, and she was like, well, that's what really happened to Neil. People would just go to all his shows, and he has a huge fan base, which is pretty cool for us. So yeah, they're gonna get that. They're gonna get like moments where you feel like you're back in the 1970s watching a Neil Diamond show. But then I said you're also going to get this deep, heartfelt story, and you're going to find out things about the man that you didn't know. And if you don't know Neil Diamond, the story itself is just very interesting, and you will be in, especially the acting done by Bob and Lisa, the therapist, and the Neil now. You feel like you're in there with them, and you're so like, you feel like you're a fly in the wall of this therapist session, but then it opens up into this amazing, like, dancing rock concert, and you're like, well, you're just getting the best of both worlds. And so I think, and you will know a lot of his music, even if you don't think you do. Like, of course you're going to know Sweet Caroline, but there's going to be so many other songs like, oh, I know that one. He was a prolific writer. So just so many hit songs and fun, and the story's just told in a great way. So I think if you are a Neil fan or don't know anything about Neil, it's a show that you don't want to miss. And not many people have missed it. It's been like, we've been selling out basically everywhere. And, to see it go from Broadway, because I did it there, and then to see what it's done on the road has been really crazy. We've been breaking records in different cities, and we recouped the tour in 5 months, which is like unheard of. So everybody's really, we're all really proud of ourselves, but also we're just happy that people are reacting so wonderfully to Neil's story.
Now, I want to ask you a little bit about, you have your own style and singing style and preferred singing style as an artist. How has it been kind of trying to tap into the mind of Neil Diamond to feel like you're really letting him shine through you on stage?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, it's just like in my body now, because I've done it for so many shows. In the beginning, I had to really think about it. Like, I would be like, oh no, that's your voice. Go, you would fall out of it when you're singing sometimes or talking, because I put on, I try to emulate his speaking style, his mannerisms, as well as his singing. So in the beginning, it was hard. It was like your brain is like, what are my lines? But also, am I saying it like Neil? Am I singing this part like Neil? Am I playing the right chords? But now, after doing it so long, it's just in my body. So I feel like it's gotten a lot easier for me. The weird thing now is when I'm not doing the show is singing in my own voice, and I'm like trying to find myself again, because this has been basically all I've done for 3 years. Which sometimes freaks me out to say, but that's really the truth. I've had a month or two off in 3 years of doing this show, so it's going to be more interesting when my time in this role is over, of like putting that aside and and finding myself again. So it's pretty wild that if you do something long enough, you just I feel like because he was a baritone, I feel like my voice has literally dropped in the last couple of years from doing this. So it'll be interesting to see, when they find their next Neil Diamond to play, how I'll react to my own voice again, going out and playing my own songs.
Absolutely. You touched on something that just made me think just now. You were saying, well, I want to ask you, was this basically like a crash course in acting for you a little bit? Because I know you mentioned you did a stage play right before this. So, learning how to kind of transform into Neil Diamond, like, was that like a little bit of a crash course for you?
I think the crash course definitely was more when I did A Bronx Tale. That was truly, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know any of like theater etiquette or where you're supposed to go. How do you get from here to there, back? Like, I had no idea. I think acting sometimes, Chaz Palminteri, who wrote A Bronx Tale and played Sonny in the movie, basically gave me this advice when I first started. He's like, you perform on stage all the time. You know how to be charismatic. But at the end of the day, learn the lines so you're not thinking about them, and react to the person telling you the lines. Listen. Just listen and react the way you would react to that, break down the script, figure out what are they really saying, what is this person really saying, and just react like a person. Sometimes when you act, you think you gotta like, and in theater, sometimes you do have to be a little bigger than life, but I try to play things very much just the way, I think I would react in that situation, and how you think the character would react, of course. So I learned a lot there. And then also, it was definitely a crash course, because I never was the lead. I mean, I'm on the stage for 2.5 hours. So when it started on Broadway, I was very intimidated about the idea of whether or not I could do that. So I did get a lot of help from our director, Michael Mayer, our associate from Broadway, Austin. I mean, they worked very hard to get me where I am now. So, but I put in a lot of work on my own in terms of studying the man and watching a billion interviews and listening to a million songs and studying his movements. And so, yeah, I guess a little bit of a crash course, but I had a little more of a crash course a couple years earlier.
How can people kind of stay in touch with you and find out more information about you if they want to connect with you online and all of that?
Yeah, I'm always on, I think where I'm most active is Instagram and Facebook. I have TikTok and Twitter and all that, but I mainly use Instagram and Facebook. So that's where I'll post all my updates of where I'll be performing, where we're performing, fun little videos from the tour, backstage, stuff like that. So yeah, it's just all at Nick Fradiani. And yeah. And then A Beautiful Noise, they have a great social media team with all updates of our whole cast and fun videos that they make as well.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. Guys, A Beautiful Noise, the Neil Diamond story. It's coming to Atlanta Fox Theater. I mentioned it earlier, but it's coming to Atlanta March 11th through March 16th. If you want your tickets, if you want to find out more information, head on over to foxtheater.com and they'll have all your information there. And of course, you can follow me across all socials at Alyssa D on Air, and I'll see you next time.